Two other things to check if your Segway is not operating properly. Looking at how the batteries are positioned, you see, of course, they're off-center, hanging off one edge. What I tell students about how to get this right is make sure it's hanging off the edge that's got no bolts. No bolts on this edge. It's the side where we haven't attached anything. This one edge has nothing attached to it all along. So that's where the batteries are supposed to hang off. The other thing that can go wrong is that you've attached the motors incorrectly. So you can see here, I've got the batteries hanging off this way. I've got the wheel underneath the batteries. The label is back away from the battery box. If you have this motor flipped around, so the wheel was over on this side and the label was here under the battery box, then you'll have no way for this to work correctly. That's something you really need to check. Make sure these motors are on. What I say is the label should be closest to that corner where we have a leg attached. The wheel should be closest to that corner where we have nothing attached. Okay, the wheel should be closest to that edge where nothing's attached. The battery should be hanging over the edge that has nothing attached. Okay, if your Segway is spinning, that means that one of the motors is not connected correctly. These wires should go red, black, and then black, red, with the red wire always on the plus sign. If you look very closely at M1 and M2, you can see a plus and minus. You want red always on the plus, at least in the case of the Segway. And now it's balancing. Out of control Segway going the wrong direction. If your Segway is going forward or backward instead of balancing, you need to switch motor 1 and motor 2, the cables, where they're plugged in. So I'm taking out M1, switching it over to M2. Make sure the red wires are still on the outside, red on the plus signs. Should get a robot that balances. Notice again how I gently set it down. So here's a Segway balancing pretty well, but moving more in one direction than the other. You can always change your Segway's behavior by modifying the location of the battery box. So here with my Segway, I've taken out 2 of the batteries from the battery box. I'm going to remove one of these bolts. So I've only got one bolt attaching the battery box to the robot. Okay, now I'm going to put the batteries back in. I'm going to select program 10. What this allows me to do is actually change the location of the battery box. But that's not good for it. But I can swivel the battery box to get just the right overhang. You can make lots of little changes until you get the weight just the way you want it. So there it is, staying very, very stationary. Slight change to where the batteries are located because I've got only one bolt attaching it and I can turn the battery box, changing the weight distribution.